When many people think of Appalachian history, they think of Daniel Boone crossing the Cumberland Gap, bringing with him European, Anglo, and German people to shape the wilderness. But the lives that shape Appalachian history are much more diverse than that. In this storytelling project, we have folk tales from Anglo origins, but also stories from Syrian, Cherokee, African American, and Italian sources come to life. All these stories shape Appalachian history, especially here in eastern Kentucky. Herein is this weaving of stories from all sorts of Appalachians.
I was born in Lynch, Kentucky in 1951. I'm the third of 8 children, and like most people, we had a 2-parent home. Dad was a coal miner, despite the fact that he was a college-trained engineer, and lived in a little house on top of a slate dump in Lynch, Kentucky. 313 Hillside Avenue is the first address I remember. That was a big time of day for us when Dad came home from work, because Mom, of course, she was like constant motion pretty much anyway, but when Dad would come in from work, we would get to go outside to meet him, and of course whoever got to him first got to have whatever he had left in his bucket, or could ride on his shoulder. So whenever I was first, I always wanted to ride on his shoulder, but Brother always went for the treat that was left from his lunch, because he made sure he left something in there. It was always a cake, or a slice of cake or something sweet. And of course the others just had to hold on to a leg or whatever, but he'd come into the house with us hanging on him one way or another, except Brother, who was a little too busy walking alongside him with the bucket. Well, he ended up in Lynch by actually moving with his parents to Lynch. He went to the old Lynch Colored School, and from there to college. But I suppose he always intended to come back because he had met my mother.
What about getting a job using his engineering degree?
Oh, he and others told us that he did apply, but he was told that it wasn't time for that there.
What did they mean, like wasn't time?
Well, our understanding, and of course now that I'm a whole lot older, is obvious. What was meant by that was it was not time for them to hire a black man in such a position or job, because engineer is not a position, it's a job. So if he was going to be employed by them, that meant that he was going to apply for work probably underground, because not many people who had brown skin were hired for outside labor jobs there as well. And he was hired as a roof bolter at number 31 Mine. It is a dangerous job. Well, most of them are dangerous jobs, I now know. But yeah, and he did lose part of one of his fingers working that job. The bread was always coming out of the oven when Dad came through the door. So by the time he got washed enough to eat, we all sat down and ate. But he'd go out and lie down on the porch swing with a pillow to nap. Because, he's finished a shift of work. He's tired, I suppose. And, of course, he carried us into the house on his body. But he'd lie down to nap for a while because he was working nights. And he would be trying to get a little rest, and we would still be wanting to talk to him and play with him and all that, because Mom said Dad was just our play pretty. But she would shoo us away so that he could get some rest. She said, "You leave him alone. Get away from your daddy for a while. Let him get some rest. Your daddy's tired." But every time she'd run us away, Dad would sit up and go, "Sweetheart, where are my chaps? I can't hear them. I can't rest." And of course, Brother and I would be like, "Yeah," because you're important to somebody when they can't rest unless you bring the noise.
Could you tell about the trek from Lower Alabama, L.A. as you called it, to how did they recruit these guys, black population from Lower Alabama?
Well, my understanding is pretty much word of mouth. You know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And once you've recruited a few people from any, certain particular areas, then, they know somebody else who would like to, don't want to say escape, but like to relocate.
Mm-hmm. Why do you say escape? What was the situation there in Lower Alabama?
Well, in some parts of Lower Alabama, it was very, very hard place to. There were hard places to live, as into just the everyday things. Just be paid for your labor. There were a number of like my parents were pretty much sharecroppers. At least my mom's parents were, and to do all that labor and to get so little for it, and often be told after the harvest was in and all that you still owed someone who had done none of the work. Your land was not yours, your house was not yours, could not be yours, you couldn't buy one, that kind of hard.
What about travel? Could they get out of that situation to travel to Kentucky? How did they do that?
There were people who would actually go down after recruiting them, bring them to where the jobs were, or where the baseball teams were who wanted them to play. Because companies did have ball teams who competed as well at that time.
And would they have to secretly come and get them, or could they do it in the open?
Many of them had to do it secretly. And we were told also that many of them, when they left their family names. So that after they arrived in Kentucky, they had this different identity.
I heard things like false bottoms on trucks and underneath the agricultural stuff, that kind of thing.
And I've, of course, not experienced any of that, but I've heard many stories of that.
Just repeat.
Of false bottoms. In vehicles, especially trucks. They're carrying, say, loads of hay or produce, or just selling watermelons and peaches, or that sort of thing, and they hid the people under them, or maybe they were transporting coffins, and yeah, that way you could hide some under the floorboard and some inside the boxes.
And were there safe houses along the way?
There were safe houses along the way, just as there were certain routes that were more safely taken than others. Because if someone were driving a vehicle, and there weren't all that many at the time as well, and of course some did hobo onto the trains, but not hobo, but they rode on the trains without paying fares. You would have to refuel at some point. And there were places where that could be done relatively safely.
And they couldn't stay in those boxes all the way up here. They had to get out somewhere.
Yes. Had to use whatever was available for, to relieve their bodies. It was not like an underground railroad. The Underground Railroad, to my understanding, existed for the benefit of those who were on it. And U.S. Steel, while they helped to facilitate some things, were doing it for their own ends, not necessarily for, because they seemed to love humanity so much that they wanted people to have better living conditions. What they wanted were laborers or good ball players. The baseball player connection was just what it sounds like. That was a big part of community life. I understand that often they would play games like on a Sunday afternoon, and people would go dressed in whatever they had worn to the church services earlier that day, to the park for the ball game. Big community events.
How many people would you say was at one of those games?
I have read that at times there were not just many hundred, but maybe a couple thousand. As many as could get anywhere, not just in the stands, but around the field. If they could see the game, they were there.
Or up on the mountain.
And because the park sat. It's Lynch. there's a mountainside behind, and mountainside across the way. Yes, there were a number of what are called big name entertainers and such who came through Lynch. People like James Brown and that sort of entertainment. I don't know exactly how our parents are arranged for that. I don't know what their connections were, but yes, they actually performed in Lynch, which of course at one time, according to the records, had more than 10,000 residents, and absolutely beautiful hotel, and what we called the first mall we ever knew in our life, which was the company store that we called the Big Store there in Lynch.
I understand they had Duke Ellington there?
That's I've been told, yes.
Mahalia Jackson?
Yes.
Lionel?
Duke Ellington, Mahalia Jackson, Lionel Hampton. Yes. I don't remember them being there. It may have been before my time, or it may have been during the time before my parents allowed the girls to be outside the house without them or the brothers. If you go over to visit Lynch, you'll see that it's still, the writing is still on the building where that now houses the Eastern Kentucky Social Club headquarters.
What does it say, the sign says?
It says Lynch Colored School. Yeah, I attended school in that building through 9th grade. My being a person who loved school, it was like extended family, because some of the teachers, of course, were neighbors. Their children were some of our classmates.
There seemed like there was a vigor about learning there.
Oh, indeed. There was a vigor about learning there. The old saying from the big children, the big kids, as we said, to us was, you better get your lessons, because if you don't know, you don't go. What do you mean if you don't know, you don't go? You won't pass to the next grade. Oh, yeah. Yeah, one of my brother's classmates was so much older than he and his other classmates that they didn't call him by his name, they called him age. Because he had gone to school more years than most of them. For some of us, it all seemed special. But from Mr. Cross, oiling those floors for us, to the teachers with their special ways of disciplining us and keeping order, to every class going on a trip somewhere every year.
Like where would you go?
Oh, we may go to someplace close like Levi Jackson or Thomas Walker State Park, or maybe Mammoth Cave. We may go to the state capitol. We may go to the national capitol. You know, may go to Cincinnati so that we could visit the zoo and see the Cincinnati Redskins. Reds, yeah.
Reds. This was all students?
To my understanding, yes. But I know no matter in which grade I was, our class went on a trip. And your class was also responsible for doing presentations at assembly on Friday. I worked in the same engineering department where my dad was not even allowed to file an application for employment some years prior. Yeah, in that sense, I came full circle in life. I was born in the old Notre Dame Hospital, which was a mission of the Catholic Diocese of Covington, the hospital. And of course, nuns were our nurses and such. But yeah, I was later, after working for the government, hired by the local coal company in the engineering department there. So the offices were in that building that had been the old hospital.
So you were working in that engineering department where your father was denied employment.
Yes. Yes, I met some of the men with whom he had worked. Some, according to their testimony, had made a few dollars off some of his suggestions. Because at the same time, or near the same time, I learned once I was working in HR, they had written things in his file like, nigger don't know his place. You know, suspend him. Dad got suspended a number of times.
In particular, what circumstances?
Well, those files were not, didn't have a whole lot of detail, but apparently, if he thought what he or his crew were being told to do and the way they were being told to do it was not what he thought was maybe the safest or best way, more efficient way to do, he would make a suggestion, ask a question. Apparently they didn't like that. My first, the opening was for a clerk typist in the engineering department, so that was the position for which I was initially hired. And J.W. Boyle decided, obviously, that he could do more, that I could do. I had much more to contribute to the department and all. And he just gave me that opportunity. It's like, whatever you're capable of doing. And he was not, as they say, an easy guy to work for. He was almost a perfectionist that way. I mean, just that if you can do it, I'll let you do it. I'll see that you're compensated for it. But if you don't mind, I'd appreciate your staying at that desk, which was the office just outside his. And he did.
You were a little bit ahead of the game in education, weren't you? Didn't you graduate early or something?
They couldn't wait to get rid of me.
Why is that?
No, I graduated high school at 15 because I was skipped over some grades.
Because?
And I was not the only one, but because those beautiful educators had decided that, especially after certain testing was done, that we were capable of learning on a higher level. And they tested. They put us. There was one other who was she was 16 when we graduated. One of my classmates, brilliant girl. But yeah, we skipped a few grades. And there were several others in one of the classes we were skipped to, who were also double promoted for the same reason. They were just obviously good, very good students, very bright people. And again, those teachers at that first school I attended were not the kind of people to let you just learn something and sit on it. They were always pushing you, to learn more, challenging you, made it their business to find out what challenged you and push you toward it. That's the way that community was. Everybody knew we were a part of everybody else.